Ah, yeah, I'm back. Another segment of video. I don't know. Maybe this will be the opening segment of videos. These are just kind of junk videos from the last couple of days, and I don't even remember the topics exactly. So still some stuff left. Anyway, all very discouraging here on Earth. So there's been this Jay Sounder thing, whatever, My Misery Me, Yvette Sate or whatever, and some other guy, John Doe guy, incomprehensible babble. And you're just saying, what is this? This is what you're going to get from people. It's different, but it's not different. No, what you're saying is perfectly reasonable, except I think we should believe something else. I don't know. You can't. I've just been sensing this inability to communicate with the human race lately, and it's just so difficult. And just see the way the world is, the whole political thing that's happening. And it's just so bizarre. What's being rationalized and justified for people's personal ends. These narrow victories. At huge cost. Let's make a lunatic president just so we can spit at some foreigners. It's a hell of a price to pay. But that's people, and you're just saying, man. I'm just saying, man. This is fucked up. More fucked up than I thought. I mean, I thought there was some hope that a reasoned argument would have its its due. It couldn't be ignored, but the world seems more and more capable of ignoring reasoning, and more and more likely to do exactly the opposite of being reasonable. And maybe that's the nature of idiocracy. Maybe we're already there. We came up with the word too late. People need to be saying idiocracy back in the 60s. To do something to stem the tide. But yeah, that's like game over because most people are idiots. But by their own, they're perfectly willing to display it. With this, this whole philosophy by contradiction. They say it with a smile on their face, like Anaconavad. Nothing wrong with a contradiction. It's fine. Yeah, it's a perfectly adequate way to run a robot, is to have it do contradictory things, to have it believe contradictory things, to have it invest in contradictory things. And so that's how you have a world that, can see purpose in making messes and then cleaning them up. Like that makes any sense. So anyway, just complaining. Daisies. Yeah. Anyway. And, still, this is all done over here, but some stuff still doing something. It's supposed to be a pleasant enough week, so that's good. These are kind of lovely. Anyway, I don't think I have much. I am a bit discouraged and I'm tired. Yeah, I'm just tired of. There's just imbeciles everywhere. The world's just thick with them. So anyway, and fluffy cats. Homeless fluffy cats. Perfectly good cat, no home. This is not a right world. It's broken. And it ain't gonna get fixed by the lunatics in charge, that's for sure. the fucking insane majority. So, yep, that's about it, I think. Alright, so anyway, enough of the video. Sorry. Junk, whatever. It's just what it is. And such. I should go for a run, but it's still too late. Yeah, it's kind of nice when the sun hits the leaves on the underside over there. Probably really can't get the full effect of that. But it's quite lovely. Anyway, until next time. Alright, just a comment that sort of provoked, thought I'd respond to it, but it's sort of irritating. Yeah. Anyway, so people with logical in their name always bothers me a little. If pain builds character, what do you think about disciplining your child through pain? Well, you know, then it's not the action that is teaching them, it's the, you know, the parent. And that's a little different. Then it's just an authority, you know, respect my authority or I'll cause you pain. So that's not necessarily going to build character. Obviously you have to do some of that. I mean, there's some things you got to stop kids from doing, walking into traffic and stuff. Yeah, you might have to pinch them in some way for their own good. But other kinds of things, like because whatever, they broke a glass or they did something and you're going to start beating your kid, that's just absolute bullshit. So yeah, you don't cause your kid pain in any kind of direct way on purpose, for the purpose of some kind of idea of discipline, if you can avoid it. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, if you can do it with rewards rather than punishments, that's what you use. So I would never advocate any pain causing. But like I said, those are just words, because in a sense you have to advocate some kind of idea that you can't hand it to your kids. So you can't solve all their problems for them, and you can't fix it all, and you can't all this kind of crap, because that does, the spoiling thing is just as dangerous. So comfort is also something you can't just distribute. And maybe you do have to, if you're going to be a responsible parent. Maybe you have to create circumstances where your kid might get a little bit humiliated by some arrogance or some confidence they might have too much of, or something else. And you know, the realization is, the fact is that yeah, you have to learn through those experiences not to be an asshole, or you end up an asshole. But it's all a real hard choice, because obviously the more character you inspire in your child, in the sense of paying more attention to the consequences of their actions, and the starving people in China, and you know, you can go down the list, the more dismal their life becomes in terms of having that awareness. And if they are not aware, you leave them ignorant, in the bliss of ignorance, then the crime is you've probably created a perpetrator, you know, somebody who's going to be the causer. So in a sense you really can't win, because your kid's either going to be something that's producing the problem, or somebody who's the victim, and or both, which is even worse, obviously. So the choices really aren't very good. But character has value, so that's what I was saying in the video. And you're going to play this game that I was advocating for somehow it has to be produced through entirely negative, when I sort of made it clear that you can gain character through getting close to disaster. You don't actually have to have it. All you have to do is see the raised hand. It doesn't have to hit you. There's lots of the threat, you know, being aware of the risk. Seeing somebody else fail can teach you a lesson. So there's lots of ways to learn without getting broken, and without being redundant, without making other people's mistakes. There's lots of ways to learn from other people. And maybe that would be a good piece of advice for somebody, is to look around and see how other people do life, and see if you can figure out where their mistakes are, and learn from them. And a lot of that is, the kind of logic kids aren't really noted for. That long-term thinking is a problem for me when I was a kid. Never figure you're going to live past 20, so why should I worry about it? It's not very realistic. I don't know if you can fix that, but I'm just saying youth doesn't tend to, at least youth of my era, didn't really have the patience for this long-term view of existing. Not that invested. Realistically. I never really had the, can't wait till I can, you wait till you can drive and do this and that, but nothing, nothing big. Didn't have plans for the whole family, blah, 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 blah. That never really made any sense, so a little hard to care about it. It wasn't something it wasn't a life I was going to live. So, but anyway, that's just tangential to the point attempting to be made. So these will probably be a bunch of little clips of not very well made points, because so far I've got a couple of them in this camera, and so I guess I'll make a video out of a bunch of not too good videos. Lucky you. Making a video. Yeah, back under the house. Way too narrow under there. But anyway, yeah, well, people, they're always too curious. So they always ask some question, why are you under the house? Aren't you a renter? All that. Yes, but sometimes it's just circumstances, And the circumstances, if I don't do it, it isn't going to get done. That's the circumstance. So, anyway. So I was thinking, while you're in these kind of conditions, you start thinking about all the other people in these kind of conditions and things people have to do, and how unpleasant it is for an awful lot of people every day to wake up and have to push through it, and they're just pushing themselves through it, just this harsh, they're a slave to their own idea, that their own dependency, really, that the only choice is death, or the whole idea of homeless, and so Snake Plisskenus, Lord and Savior guy, all that kind of stuff. So he's sort of in that circumstance, where he's kind of got a little bit sloppy and allowed himself to degrade to a point where, it's so hard to pick it back up and put it all back together again. And it's kind of an evil of our civilization that, people just glorify all this wealth that's out there. And, maybe a small percentage of it, if you took, 3% of the wealth away, and provided some sort of real mechanism to rebound people, recover the recoverable. And I suppose it's recognizing the difference, between the chronic alcoholic or abuser or fucker-upper, versus somebody who's actually going to be saved, actually saved from a dismal end of never quite getting enough air from the surface to be able to swim to shore, however you want to metaphor it. They're so down that they just can't quite bounce high enough to stay high or to stay elevated.
And unfortunately, these words, high and elevated, really are a poor choice of words in the sense, because yeah, that's sort of what the story is usually. Is, you know, for him it's Adderall. You know, I'm sure everybody has their drug of choice. You know, many of the people who crash and are not quite burned, you know, the gasoline didn't spread on them entirely, but you know, they're gasoline soaked, maybe could be the metaphor. So they're dangerous, because I've seen that type, you know, where they are in the mood to try to suck too much out of life, and you know, they'll crash their plane on you. So you have to be really careful when you try to help them, because yes, they really are covered with gasoline, and they're just ready to find an excuse to burn you, you know, while they play their game. And so, but you know, just saying, I still think it would be worthwhile for our society, our civilization, to have a little bit more of a capacity to recognize the difference between the reclamatable and the unreclamatable. They don't even do that with prison. You know, there's obviously a difference between the psychotic, lunatic criminal types and the people who, you know, kind of just made a mistake. You know, maybe made the same mistake twice, but you know, there's still somebody there. There's a human being there that can be salvaged, and there doesn't seem to be much willingness. Well, hands moving a little too much. This is really uncomfortable. To do anything to see if they could, you know, do something, save them again. But then again, would save them for what, right? Because in a sense, it's all a trap in the end. You're always going to be a slave to your lifestyle, and you know, so many people end up in the condition they end up in because yes, once you have a little, you want a little bit more, and then you want a little bit more, and you start piling stuff in your boat, and then your boat sinks. So you know, so that's the tricky part, right? Is somebody ever truly reclamated? You know, do they really learn their lesson? You know, or are they just going to do the same thing all over again? Anyway, lowering the jack. Let's see what happens. Oh, nothing. Good. That's what's supposed to happen, is nothing. So that was good. So anyway, so just thinking and such, that yeah, you feel sorry for people, and but part of you also, there's no good solution. So you know, there's no, well, there's better and worse outcomes, I guess. I'll just say that, and that's acknowledging that truth shouldn't be that big a deal, and you know, there should be minor things we can do or think or believe or state or invest in that, just to recognize that simple truth that yeah, there's probably so see, part of the problem is, right, you can't make it profitable to crash all the way, right? Because that's sort of what the system does. If you go low enough, then you'll get something, and you know, and then there's often a whole bunch of resources for some people, and then no resources for others, and it's such an uneven game played. You know, and then it's the whole extortion, because you have a kids thing. You know, if you have kids, you're allowed to make all kinds of mistakes, and they'll all be forgiven. And if you're a little bit responsible and you don't make too big a mess, well, then they just figure, well, who cares? You're not a kid, so, you know, if you die in the street, no one really cares. So, well, anyway. Guess I didn't add anything of value here. Because it is a dilemma. Ow. So, I'll shut up and move on and such, if I can find my way out of here. So anyway, until the next time and such.